Hello and good evening.
Good evening.
Good. I love it. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our Nashville Mayoral Forum on Transportation. My name is Ashley Northington, and I am the chair of Moving Forward. Moving Forward is an organization supported by the Nashville Chamber of Commerce that is dedicated to advocating for regional mobility solutions that work for Middle Tennesseans. Through a cohesive community effort, Moving Forward empowers business, community, and transit thought leaders to engage in the critical transportation issues facing Middle Tennesseans. Moving Forward reviews the region's progress towards greater transportation options, and we work to identify the mobility and specifically transit solutions that will work for the region. We value accountability, collaboration, equity, regionalism, and urgency. Along with our media partner, the Nashville Scene, we are excited to host this mayoral forum focused on the rising transportation issues in Nashville Davidson County. This forum is in partnership with the following organizations: Cumberland Region Tomorrow, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee, the Urban League of Middle Tennessee, Vanderbilt University's Office of Transportation and Mobility, and Walk Bike Nashville. Let's take a moment to thank these partners and the Moving Forward Coordinating Committee for making this event a possibility. If you're a member of any of these organizations, please stand. Stand up. Thank you. With the multitude of mayoral forums happening across our county this election cycle, we are lucky enough to have 9 and maybe 10 candidates here with us today. We have Matt Wiltshire, Freddie O'Connell, Vivian Willoit, Alice Rowley, Sharon Hurt, maybe Stephanie Johnson, Heidi Campbell, Jeff Yarbrough, Jim Gingrich, and Natisha Brooks. Please join me in thanking them for joining us. We're going to provide a little bit more information on our candidates in just a second. With the addition of 2 candidates who registered this morning, we might go a little bit over our time tonight. So we wanted to let you know that in advance. Thank you in advance for your dedication as you learn more from the candidates on these very important transportation issues. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Dr. James Hildreth and the staff at Meharry Medical College for hosting us. I'm going to bring up Dr. Hildreth, but as he makes his way, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. As the president and CEO of Meharry Medical College, Dr. James Hildreth is leading the technological, academic, and clinical transformation of the nation's largest private, historically Black academic health sciences center, focusing on the future of an organization with challenges represented by constant changes in both higher education and healthcare. He has positioned Meharry for success through innovative programs, strategic partnerships, and entrepreneurial culture. Please join me in welcoming Dr. James Hildreth.
Thank you for the kind introduction. First of all, welcome everyone to Meharry Medical College. We're so pleased to host this forum this evening, and the subject could not be more important. So for 147 years, our mission here has remained the same: to serve the underserved. It's especially appropriate that the topic of your conversation tonight, transportation, is being held on our campus tonight. Some may ask, well, what does transportation have to do with health? My answer is everything, but you probably knew that. Consistent, safe, regular public transportation is a lifeline for thousands of people who are living a stone's throw away from the campus tonight. Without it, they cannot get to their job to pay their bills. They cannot get to the grocery store to buy nutritious food. They cannot make it to their doctor's appointments nor fill their prescriptions. These everyday realities for the underserved are what we know now as the social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the factors in a person's life that too often dictate whether or not they will overcome an illness or have a healthy, safe life. For years in this city, we've been talking about improving our transportation infrastructure. The need to ensure access and connectivity is more evident now than ever. I urge each of you, as you develop your platforms, candidates, to prioritize those citizens of Nashville who live just beyond these walls, people who are seeking to work, struggling to live, and longing to play and have an active life. Transportation is vital to all of these aspirations and something that many of us take for granted. I'd like to offer you a lesson from healthcare that seems important in this context. Many people in healthcare are heralding something called precision medicine, in which technologies like genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and other omics make it possible to develop treatment plans precisely tailored to each individual. These are really amazing technologies that offer promise for better health. But the reality is, if we simply made old-fashioned medicines for high blood pressure, heart disease, routine screenings, and other things available to everybody, that would have much more impact than precision medicine could hope to have. What's your point, Mr. President? In a lot of ways, what we need to do is take the old-fashioned ways, modes of transportation, make them efficient, accessible, and available to all of us. That will solve a lot of our problems. We don't need shiny new, I'm sorry, maybe I'm getting out of my orbit.
Preach.
Just get on the stage. We gotta see
Wait,
if
wait,
you wanna
wait,
run.
wait.
I just say Hildress for mayor.
Well, you know, no. Well, you are in my house, so I get to express my opinion. Isn't that right? You come to my house, I get to express my opinion. Anyway, my point is, a lesson from healthcare is technologies are fine, but sometimes old-fashioned solutions can have a much bigger impact. So ensuring that everyone in Nashville can move freely and easily on our public roads will be a critical to undertaking for the next mayor of Nashville, whoever it happens to be. So as you consider the future of Nashville, candidates, I ask you to please do not forget the least of us in the city. And a really accessible, safe public transportation system will be profoundly important to improving this city for the future years to come. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for letting me express my opinion. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hildreth, for your remarks. They were on point as always. So let's begin today by introducing you all to tonight's candidates. We have Matt Wiltshire, who is the former Economic Development Director for the City of Nashville. Freddie O'Connell, a District 19 Metro Council member. Vivian Willoyd, who's the Davidson County Property Assessor. Alice Rowley, who is the former State Economic Development Official under Governor Bill Haslam. Sharon Hurt, an at-large Metro Council member. Heidi Campbell, a Tennessee State Senator. Jeff Yarbrough, a Tennessee State Senator. Jim Gingrich, retired Alliance Bernstein executive. And Atisha Brooks, a public, private, and homeschool educational consultant. So here's the deal. The goal tonight is to cover as much ground as possible when it comes to the transportation issues in Nashville and Davidson County. We will have 5 questions that every candidate will answer with 60 or 90 seconds to do so. In addition, we will have 5 groups of 2 candidates each respond to a specific question with 30 seconds to provide an answer. We have a lot of people speaking tonight, so we have to be very firm on our time. My dear friend Meg here will help us keep track to make sure that we don't go over. As the moderator, I am going to be listening to your answers very closely. I might have a follow-up question for you based on what you've shared, so be prepared for such. So, this first question that we're going to start with is a question for everyone. So all of you will get a chance to answer. You have 60 seconds to provide your response. Your time will begin when you start speaking. We're going to begin with Jeff, and we're going to move down the line to the right. Okay, here's the question. Davidson County is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States without dedicated funding for transportation, resulting in the lowest per capita spending on transit. How do you plan as mayor to allocate funding and secure resources for transit infrastructure projects and ongoing maintenance needs?
Thanks, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. The first thing is just in the ongoing budgeting of the city, I think we have to continue to make and really expand how much we are investing in transit in the existing system, especially in terms of making sure that it is more accessible, more usable, and because I think that ultimately we have to get to dedicated funding, but part of the pathway of doing that is making sure that Nashvillians think that we're fully utilizing the system that we have. Fundamentally, we have to get to dedicated funding as a city, and I am committed to leading an effort for us to get there. I'll say this though, I think we have to stop thinking about choosing a new transit strategy every time we elect a new mayor. Transit is not designed or built on 4-year cycles. It is built over decades. And I think the next effort for dedicated funding, we need to make sure that we are ready to
Thank you, Senator
start
Yarborough.
the next round after. Okay. I'll come back to that. We're going right or left?
Going to the right.
So, me. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks for hosting this. It's great to be here. So I think we actually do need a bold transit plan. We are the second most car-dependent city in the country. And guess what's first? Memphis. So Tennessee is representing. We need a transit plan many yesterdays ago, and so we're going to need to have another transit referendum, but we do have more money coming in from the federal government than we've had in our lifetimes, and I know this because I sit on the Senate Transportation Committee, and we just passed a huge transportation bill. It's mostly paving. So we really do need meaningful transit. I have a very big idea for that, and I also have some very, stay the course ideas for it that I'd love to share as we move on this evening, but it's probably too much to get into in this 1 minute. Thanks.
Good evening, and thank you all so much for being here and having us. You know, Dr. Hildreth stood there and said that to serve the underserved, and I gave 20 years of my life to Mayoral, and it just dawned on me that that's probably why I am a public servant, because I came here 19 years old. So, as far as the question is concerned, I am going to build relationships with the state and our federal government, just like I did when we started the shuttle transportation for seniors, because they needed to have a way to get to the grocery stores and to their doctor's appointments. I am going to do the same thing as I did when I created the Gateway to Heritage, taking an old bridge and turn it into something beautiful that talks about our history here. I believe that the transportation problem is not something that we can handle overnight, and we got to bite that elephant one piece at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. My name is Alice Rowling. I'm delighted to be with you tonight with Moving Forward. I have been actually quoting your study frequently in a lot of our debates, is that of the top 25 metro markets, Nashville remains the only one without a dedicated transit funding mechanism. The state, for everything we talk about what's been taken away, the state gave us the ability to levy our own dedicated transit, and we failed pretty spectacularly when we took a go-it-alone approach. So the first step will be to get either in November 24 or 26 dedicated transit on the ballot, to do that in coordination with our other regional mayors. And I love thinking about what Dr. Hildreth said to us here at Mayoral. For us to fix the heart in transit, we have to think about the bypass. We have to work regionally in order to solve our regional transit challenges.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be here to share my answers and my concerns. When you're talking about mass transit or dedicated funding for transit, it has to start with a regional approach. It cannot be on the backs of taxpayers, just of Davidson County. And as mayor, I'm not going to make it that way. We're going to have to bring in a regional approach by bringing in cities and counties, surrounding areas, including the state and federal government, in order for us even to proceed with the dedicated funding. And when we think about dedicated funding, there's a number of ways that we can approach it. When we talk about impact fees, when I was on the Metro Council, I got beat up about employing impact fees, when right now our neighboring county, Rutherford County, uses impact fees. We're talking about 2003 to 2011. We've been kicking the can down the road. It has to stop. But the one thing I must say with our approach, it must be regional, and it must not be on the backs of Davidson County taxpayers.
Well, I heard traffic was bad out there tonight. I know those of you who didn't ride the 19 Herman to arrive here tonight rode the 29 Jefferson, and I heard a lot of folks that did that. But I walked around the corner from Jefferson Street. Good news for everybody up here and everybody in here is that we started this fight already in this budget. We got $2.8 million in the budget that the mayor will start in October for WeGo, where Steve Bland and many of our board of director members are in the room tonight, to expand crosstown capacity. In addition, we got several $100,000 for the new Lawson High School, and this is a fight I've been engaged in for a long time. When we proposed $15 million for a private parking deck at the Nashville Zoo, which our family loves, we secured $12 additional million so that WeGo could expand community transit centers to allow this crosstown capacity. We are going to resume the conversation 5 years later with Moving Forward Tennessee. I stood on the steps of City Hall just a few weeks ago with a coalition that is ready to start dedicated funding again. We will start it on day one when I am mayor. Thank you so much.
So I haven't heard an answer yet on dedicated funding, what's proposed or what the timetable might be. And I think actually it's really hard. It's really hard to come and say, here's what it's going to be, because it needs to begin with community engagement. And so what we need to do, the reason that the referendum failed in 2018, there were a variety of reasons, but one of which was the citizens felt that there was inadequate engagement with the public about the overall plan. I think it's going to be incredibly complicated if we're now talking about working with other counties outside and crafting a plan with the citizens of those counties, many of which have very different interests. But I think it's going to be really difficult to have a plan in place and adequate communication to go to a referendum in 26. I think it's more likely to be in 28, but I'm open to having the conversation. This is going to need to be led by the community with the mayor's office and stakeholders across the city. It's important, though, to remember Dr. Hildreth's comment about access. Sales taxes, the most available funding source, are pretty regressive, and we need to find more creative ways to finance it.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks?
Natisha Brooks, 16 Twitter. I'm going to speak for one of our colleagues that are not here. She's the only one that probably takes the bus. She said it in one of our forums. Senator Campbell, I'm sure you can attest to that. And she is probably not here because of traffic. She rides the bus. So we do have a mayoral candidate, Stephanie, that rides the bus to work. As far as dedicated funding, we need to look at not just the $760 million we get for gas tax that's not being used, but I'd like to propose and work with the state legislature on the unnecessary food tax. Maybe we can eliminate the food tax and use those revenue elsewhere to start on our transit system and get adequate more buses in areas that are needed. Humankind, our family, we need to start with transit within the inner city, within our community, to make sure that people can get to work. The definition of capitalism, moving to labor.
Tim, go ahead.
So I think there have been a number of good points made. I mean, the fact is this is a regional challenge. There is, if you look at the last 5 years, 90% of the region's population growth has been in the counties that surround Davidson County. Many of those folks, in turn, commute into downtown. So ultimately, we do have to develop a regional solution. It's unlikely to be everything all at once, but we can start to work with a partner like the folks up and down 24, because that is a problem corridor. And we can start to show folks that we can actually achieve solutions, particularly if the state moves forward with choice lanes. Within the county, again, to me, there are common sense solutions that we can start to move forward with, that I see Steve Bland there, that we are starting to move forward with, that again builds the confidence across the people in Davidson County that in fact we can get stuff done, whether or not that is
Thank you.
period.
This next question is also going to be for everyone. And this one is going to be based on statements that you all have made about dedicated funding in previous forums. As you all are probably well aware by now, Moving Forward is committed to advocating for dedicated funding for transit. For this question, you each have 30 seconds, 30, to dive a little bit deeper on your positions. I'm going to start with Heidi this time, and we're going to move down the line to your right. Okay. Heidi, you previously stated that Nashville could secure funding from federal opportunities. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position relative to dedicated funding?
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that we need to get funding in lots of different ways. And certainly we need to look at having another referendum. That having been said, there is federal funding available more so than ever for certain transit initiatives, and identifying those opportunities and catalyzing them is definitely something that I intend to do.
Perfect. Thank you. Council Lady Hurt, previously you stated that you proposed dedicated vehicle lanes for regional transit. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position relative to dedicated funding?
Absolutely, because it seems like Tennessee loves the Tennessee Titans, and I think that if we had a dedicated lane and had a Titans Express, people would spend money to do it. I think if we had some regulations, and since they would not go for my suggestion of having a toll, if they're getting something in return, I believe they may like that. And if I got 10 seconds, then I want to say that I drove a car for a year without reverse. Does that help to know that I can do anything?
Okay. Alice, previously you shared that the single most important thing for the next mayor to do in 23 to 27 is to quarterback the process to have a dedicated transit referendum, which you agree with holding. Can you take 30 seconds to share why that's your position?
Yeah, so my great-grandfather, who I talk quite frequently about, is Albert Gagne, and the tallest point in the county at Radnor Lake is named for him. That's a state park and not a regional park. But he came here as an engineer as part of the Dutchman's Curve railroad disaster. The engineers who have created the plan know what the right thing to do. They don't need a politician or a mayor to get in there and screw it up. They need me to quarterback bringing the dollars here so that we can leverage the state and federal funds that we need to execute the plan.
Thank you. Vivian, previously you shared that you're committed to securing dedicated transit funding as part of your push for economic parity among neighborhoods in Davidson County. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position?
Well, there was a forum the other night. We talked about paving of roads in certain neighborhoods that were not paved, and there were some neighborhoods who had great roads. And when we're talking about neighborhoods and we want to close the economic parity of two tax district neighborhoods in the same tax district, we want to be clear in reference to our approach of equity to make sure that they have the have-nots have what the neighborhoods who do not have. We have to close that economic parity to make it easier for everyone.
Freddie, previously you stated that dedicated funding is our biggest missing ingredient for the success of the city, and you can count on me to lead the effort to get it done in my first term. Can you take 30 seconds to share more about why this is your position?
Yeah, because it's true. This is the thing that we need most to do what Dr. Hildreth encouraged us all to do tonight. Is we are lagging our major American city peers. It's hurting us on affordable housing. It's hurting us on transit. It's easy to base a program that is on In Motion and still get the community input to solve the details. In Motion is our strategic plan that is still in effect. It's been bolstered by Mayor Cooper's transportation plan, and now what we need is the community will and political will to deliver on the promise, and I expect to do that. Thanks.
Matt, previously you shared that you commit to have a plan in place by the end of your first term. It won't necessarily be secured, the dedicated funding, but you will have a very firm plan in place. Can you take 30 seconds to share why that's your position?
Sure. We've had two big efforts at transit just in the time that I've been in office, and they've both failed. And we cannot fail a third time. I think a rushed plan without sufficient community engagement, trying to engage evidently with community partners in surrounding counties and pushed forward to a vote in a year or even a year and a half after the mayor takes office, it may not be sufficient time to build community buy-in to make sure that it's successful. If we fail again, it's going to really damage the city.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks, we'll go back to you. Previously, you stated that you would commit to transit funding, but noted that you plan to lower property taxes. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position?
Yes. Property taxes increased during the worst time of our lives during COVID. We want to reverse the property taxes back to where they were and work with the state to get more funding to help with our needed transits, especially going from Murfreesboro coming on into Nashville and the Nashville coming into, going into the airport. As you look around, and as I say, humankind is our family, we need to make sure that as you're looking at recovery, tow trucks, a lot of people are getting their cars towed, so we need to make sure that there's transit.
Thank you. Jim, previously you stated that Nashville is leaving too many state and federal funding sources untapped and that you aren't prepared to pledge to secure dedicated funding in your first 4 years in office. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position?
Again, I think on dedicated funding, we cannot fail. I'm going to echo what Matt said. I don't see us being able to do that before 28. I think 24 is going to be too much of a lift. In the interim, though, what we can do is not only engage the community, but put in place common sense set of practices and show people that we can actually deliver, whether or not that is within Davidson County or on a regional basis.
Jeff, previously you stated that I believe the next referendum that the city has for dedicated funding for transit has to succeed. So I'm not going to pre-commit to rushing it, but I will commit to beginning that work and hoping to get it done in the first term. Can you take 30 seconds to explain why that's your position?
Yes, and I'll revise and extend a little, but so I plan and my goal is to get to a dedicated funding referendum in 2026. But I think the most important thing is that the coalition of organizations and individuals in this room has to be committed enough to this effort that even if we do come up short on the next one, that we are committed to start the next day to continue that effort. And so what we can't afford to do is have to have another time when we throw out the plan and start over a decade later.
Thank you. So this next question is for our first pair of mayoral candidates, and it's going to be Matt and Freddie. You will each have 30 seconds to answer this question, and your time will begin when you start speaking. So here's the question. Addressing traffic congestion and promoting alternative modes of transportation is a pressing issue, and this crosses beyond Davidson County into the Middle Tennessee region. We also know that a transit system that ends at the county line is not beneficial for the region. How will you, as mayor, Work with your counterparts in neighboring counties to improve local and regional accessibility to transportation options beyond driving and to help fund a regional transportation system through the Improve Act.
Yeah, so as I'm sure most of the folks in this room know, Mayor Dean, following a trip to Denver, created the Mayor's Caucus, which was an incredibly effective organization addressing not just traffic and transit, but other issues that cross county lines. That caucus, unfortunately, has suffered, as many other institutions had, during COVID. I will absolutely re-engage, not just with the Mayor's Caucus, but with GNRC and other regional organizations to make sure that we have a committed network of transit alternatives throughout the region.
I was on that 2008 trip to Denver as a member of the Nashville MTA Board of Directors. I came back and worked with the mayor's office to build those relationships with the transportation folks in the region that are still eager to do it. And then I, as a Cumberland Region Tomorrow board member, we continued that with planning exercises around the region. Mayor Cooper did us a favor by starting the process of a traffic management center, and we are also working on transportation demand management within the region, following the lead of Vanderbilt University, whose MoveVU program is an incredibly important model for the entire region.
You guys are really good with the time.
We've done this a few times.
So let's actually dig just a little bit deeper. And Freddie, I want to start with you this time. How do you get the mayors of Rutherford, Wilson, or Sumner counties to care about transportation improvements in Davidson County? How will you build those relationships with your peers across the region?
When Nashville doesn't manage our growth, those challenges spill out into the surrounding 10-county region. The mayors there are very invested, both at the city and county level. They're very invested already in the Regional Transportation Authority. They're invested in the Mayor's Caucus, and as mayor, I expect to reinvest in that Mayor's Caucus too. We've staffed it with the staff of the Metropolitan Planning Organization that passed, which is now part of our Greater Nashville Regional Council. We'll continue to staff it when I'm mayor, and I will personally attend most of those meetings because that level of investment in those regional relationships helps us also express shared priorities to the state.
I think they already care. In fact, I know they already care because it's many of their citizens, their voters who are coming to jobs in Nashville who are stuck in that traffic and most directly impacted by it because they're having to commute all the way from Murfreesboro. So they get hit with the part in Davidson County, but also with transit issues that exist in Williamson County, Rutherford County, and the surrounding counties. They already care. What they need is leadership and someone to provide solutions to them so we can actually help their citizens get to work more easily.
Perfect.
And tighten scams.
So I wanna ask you one more question, and I'm gonna start with you, Matt. So the Transportation Modernization Act was recently passed by the state of Tennessee as a potential solution to enhance our transportation system. So how do you envision integrating this act into broader regional transportation efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those issues that we're going to need to address. The interstates obviously don't stop, and even state roads don't stop at county lines. And so that is a perfect example of how to leverage the opportunities that exist at the state, and also, by the way, at the federal level with the Infrastructure Act, those dollars to make real transit improvements in our region. So we are going to have to work with surrounding counties to make sure that we find solutions that actually work for their residents as well as ours. And it's about listening as much as talking.
Unfortunately, unlike the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and Inflation Reduction Act, the Transportation Modernization Act has a lot of paving activity in it that isn't specifically multimodal in nature. We are going to have to look at that because state of good repair is also important. We've got a way behind bridges and culverts program in Nashville, and we've got a lot of potholes, and many of them are on state roads and interstates. It's important to use the act that we have to take advantage of every multimodal effort in it, but we're going to have to combine the state and federal programs that are available to us while we continue to invest strategically with our local dollars.
Thank you both for your answers. I appreciate it. So let's move on to a question for the next pair of candidates. This time, Vivian and Alice. You will each have 30 seconds to answer, and your time will begin when you start speaking. Vivian, we're going to start with you first. Here is the question. Creating an inclusive and accessible public transportation system is vital for all residents, including those with disabilities, working individuals, our growing aging population, and those without vehicle access. What specific measures will you implement to ensure that public transportation provides equitable access to jobs, education, healthcare, and other opportunities so that all Nashvillians have an opportunity to prosper?
Great question. When you think about affordable housing, we need to make sure that affordable housing units, residents, our neighborhoods are in transit locations where a person can be able to get on and off the bus. I don't live in an affordable housing area, but even right now, I don't have access to get to the bus system. What else I would do is also expand the bus system. We want to be able to allow for people to be able to get to their jobs and be able to use the transit system as an option of buses.
Yeah, so Icy Hart is 87 years old, and she raised me, and the way that she gets around now is through the MTA Access Ride. And many of our elderly neighbors we need to continue funding Access Ride. And we also need to remember that our elderly neighbors are not all digital natives, and we need to retain aspects around being able to allow them to call in instead of to text in, and to be able to talk to an actual person to make sure that the bus comes or the access ride comes when they need it.
I want to ask a follow-up question, and Alice, I'll start with you. The recent Point of Departure report sheds light on the transportation challenges experienced by college students who juggle multiple responsibilities while pursuing their education. If you're elected as mayor, how will your administration prioritize improving transit access for those attending post-secondary institution, considering the need to balance work, school, and other personal responsibilities?
So I think we've done quite a bit with improving the crosstown connectivity that helps students from this part of town to move towards Hundred Oaks and crosstown through Wedgwood. I would, in this case, actually rely heavily on data. I think we saw this actually during the COVID closure. We can map pretty clearly where people are trying to go every day, and trying to both align our bus and our transit schedules around the data heat map that tells us both where people are coming from and where they're trying to get to.
Creating an app, because all of the young people are all on these things right here, to let them know which way they can get on and off a bus system, but also giving them discounts in reference to fees and able to ride the bus. When I was at Tennessee State University, the bus, before I bought my car, but the bus was the best way that I got around when I wanted to not only to go across town and to go to work, but also to go shopping.
So let's stay with this line of questioning. And so, Vivian, I'll start with you for this next one. Again, you have 30 seconds. So as high school students engage in work-based learning, dual enrollment like I did, or external internships, many of them don't have access to personal vehicles to get them where they need to be. Some of our public high schools do not have strong access to public transit. How would you remedy that, and which schools would you start with?
Well, I mean, when you talk about the high school students, you can also have to get them from home to where they need to be. So you need to expand bus routes to be able to reach from where they live to where they're going. And of course, that takes with investing in WeGo, ensuring that we can expand the bus routes so that students can be able to not only be able to get from home to where they need to go in reference to schools, and the schools that I would definitely focus on are those that has the low school rating that need access so they can get to their wraparound services.
Alice.
Yep, so as a student at Hume Fogg, I would ride the public bus down to my parents' office on Hillsborough Road, and I think that for certain schools, we do that pretty successfully. We can use our existing public schools transportation to help bring students into a hub in order for them later to be able to access additional public transportation options, and we should also do in the limits within FERPA that we can, and the limits to be able to have some connectivity with routes, knowing when those buses are getting there.
Thank you. Thank you both for your answers. This very next question is one that is for everyone. You will each have 60 seconds to provide an answer. We're going to begin with Sharon, and we're going to move down the line to your right. Okay? Here is the question. Can you share the specific steps you will take to convince those who oppose the AMP as well as the Let's Move Nashville Transit Plan and referendum that they should support equitable investment in transit? How will you engage the community and stakeholders in improving transit, including the development of and implementation of a plan and/or referendum?
So I think that it is proven today that I don't have to convince anyone anymore that we've got to do something. If I show them consistently the traffic congestion that we are focusing on consistently, I think we're going to have to go to each neighborhood and talk to each one of them to let them know. And because I deal with students and people who are underserved, I think I'd like to bring some of them and talk to those individuals who were against it. I think it was the messaging in the referendum and the opposition that created the problem that we have, but nothing leaves nothing, and we have to do something. So I think we would engage them on a personal level, going one by one and convincing them that they want to be able to move around.
Alice? Mm-hmm.
So this particular process will be difficult. Governing in the age of outrage that we are in now exists to typically work to divide us. I would begin being very intentional with bringing our faith-based community and also our business community to the table to be part of the planning. Those are two of the institutions that remain that the public continue to trust. And then I would also say, look at my track record. In 2014, I was the only woman in America who was running a statewide campaign for a Republican. I ran Lamar Alexander's last campaign for office. It was pretty difficult. The Middle Tennessee market in particular was very difficult, but we won. And I think running a campaign is very different in the amount of engagement that you have to do than running a PR process for sort of a typical corporate enterprise. So I would say, let's go.
I think the people are ready. They're ripe for receiving some type of option towards a transportation plan that's going to make it better for everyone. Nashville has been strong, but it has not been strong for everyone. So we're going to have to first build the trust up with our neighborhoods to ensure that they know this is about them. When the transit plan that tried to pass some years ago, people were not clear on the plan, so we must make it clear what is it that the plan is going to do. And then you have to say, does the plan help me? Does the plan help you? That takes community engagement. That takes not one-on-one necessarily communications, but it takes community engagement and letting people to be able to vent and to be able to understand what will the plan do, and at the end of the day, what will the plan cost us? Being clear.
I want to bust a myth up front. Transit is incredibly popular in Nashville. And one of the things that it is not is always meaningful or accessible to most of our public. One of the best things we can do is lower barriers. One of the things I'm proudest of as we exit this Metro Council term is establishing the use of some of our American Rescue Plan Act one-time federal money to start We Go Ride, the institution or employer-based program that allows students, faculty, and staff to ride fare-free right here at Meharry Medical College and all 4 of our historically black colleges and universities. This is incredibly important for this population in particular, but the more major employers around the region and the city that take advantage of programs like this, the more people we get riding. Ask any Metro Council member at the district level what they will experience if you cut transit in their districts. It's incredibly, incredibly unpopular to cut transit service. And the thing we have failed consistently to do is add it systematically. This is exactly why we go put an in-motion-based plan on our desks 6 years ago to start this process, and I'll continue it.
Look, we got to start by being honest. This lost 65-35. Start with that honest assessment of what happened. And since that time, there has been an erosion in trust in government, not an increase in trust in government. A transit plan is a massive investment where you have to trust, the broad public has to trust that this investment is worth there is a return on the investment we're asking them to make. So the first start to this is rebuilding public trust. That happens by just doing the basic things right that have not been happening for far too long. Getting the potholes filled, picking up the trash, demonstrating that government can function well and take care of the citizens. And when we do that right, when we have an honest engagement and assessment with citizens and they believe that the government is solving the problems that affect them on a daily life, and then when we have robust community engagement and listen to what it is that you want to have in your neighborhood, then we can begin to have this. That's why I think it's going to take longer, not a year or two, to launch this plan.
Thank you. Natisha, please.
We need to work with the school board and Dr. Battle. You mentioned which schools would we work with first. Maplewood, Glencliff, Antioch, McGavick, Overton. These are schools and areas where students need transportation. And by the way, a lot of the Gen Zers, they don't want to drive anyway because they don't want to pay the insurance. They want us to pay it for them. So what we need to do is work with the school system, work through the school system and work with WeGo, work with the bus transit to make sure that students and parents know the access that we're trying to do to make sure that their children get around.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are not in a position to ask people to eat the whole elephant right now. We have to show people that the basics can work. And so that's everything from showing them that on the higher volume routes, we increase the frequency of the buses, we get in technology so that we don't have bus bunching, we keep the roads in good conditions, we actually get sidewalks built where they need to get built and with the right maintenance of sidewalks, give folks a reason to believe that we can actually solve their problems. Similarly, if we are looking at a choice lane, show folks that we can start to do regional transit with rapid transit bus service so that other counties are willing to sign on. We have to get the basics right to build trust because it's only then that we're going to be able to articulate for people in a way that they believe that they themselves are going to benefit from this.
Thank you. Jeff?
This has to be a sustained campaign of education and engagement that should start on the mayor's first day in office to try to work through how we are getting people to understand whether it makes sense to dig under downtown, how we get people to understand that there are land use decisions that we're making at the same time as we're making transit decisions, how density and transit in certain areas, even if it's not coming to your house, is a benefit to you. That, I think, is one of the most important things. We should also be working with the state to ensure that we can get more pedestrian infrastructure placed into our dedicated funding strategy, because I think that is something that is much easier for a lot of people across the city to latch onto as the clearest point in which it improves their lives and their ability to access transit. You can't talk about everything you would do in 3 years of effort in 60 seconds, but that's a few of the ideas that I think the next mayor has to implement. It's a long-term effort, but it's got to start on the first day.
Thank you. Heidi?
Let's not conflate the disinformation that was disseminated around AMP with the transit referendum because they're very different and they failed for very different reasons. It does matter what the actual plan is, and there are different plans. I think that TDOT did a study several years ago about moving Radnor Yards to Wilson or Rutherford County. Radnor Yards, I'm sure a lot of you know, is the CSX train switching yards that's adjacent to 100 Oaks. What that would do is free up our internal train lines so that we could actually use those for transit. Trying to get that kind of right-of-way, the opportunity costs of trying to do that in a city that's been so haphazardly built is insurmountable. So we really do need to look at big plans like that, and guess what? It costs 1/6 the price of the transit referendum that we looked at that failed. So it does matter what the plan is. I think people are really sick of sitting in traffic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for your answers. We're going to move on to our next pair of candidate questions. Unfortunately, one half of that pair is missing. So Sharon, these questions are for you. So you'll have 30 seconds to respond to this one. Here's the question. Addressing traffic congestion and promoting alternative modes of transportation is a pressing issue. How do you plan to tackle this challenge, and what initiatives do you support to reduce congestion, enhance active transportation, and increase ridership on public transit?
So let me just say, first of all, I am a common sense person and I will be a common sense mayor. I have already engaged a national organization to look at what the congestion problem is here, because I think you got to get to the root of it before you can get to the fruit of it. But I think we can do something as simple as having flex schedules for our students. Some can go at 7 a.m., some go at 8, some 9, some at 10. I think we can focus on our senior students, our high school students who are at, well, considering that I'd be the other half.
I know, but unfortunately, we can only have 30 seconds. So I do want to ask you a follow-up question, though.
Yes.
So ensuring environmental sustainability is a critical aspect of most transportation projects. How do you intend to incorporate environmental considerations such as emissions reductions, sustainable practices, and address transportation's impact on the environment right from the start of the project?
Well, I'm going to ensure that we have some charging stations there in order for our cars to be electric and not cost the city so much after these projects are built. Now, I'm the first to say that I am not an engineer and I'm not a specialist, so I'm going to engage the most prolific and intelligent experts in this field to help me decide on how it is that we need to navigate this process. I mean, it's a lot that the mayor needs to know, but all of the things I don't think that she will know.
All right, and this is the last question, and this one is a big one, but you only have 30 seconds to respond. Okay, here's the question. With any proposed transportation plan, there are specific solutions for specific areas of town that are rolled out on different timelines. Inevitably, there will always be one part of the county that goes first, and then there will always be people who question why that particular community went first. But of course, somebody has to go first. How do you plan to unite a city behind a plan that will incorporate multiple different forms of transportation with implementation on different timelines in different parts of town?
Well, I'll basically look at those who need and what it is that they need the most. I mean, we put stations, I know having those substations and transit centers in different parts of town is very, very important. But I think we have to evaluate the needs of every part of town and address those at that particular time. And that, to me, is the way that we do it. We meet the needs of the people in that point. And we've got to talk to them and find out what they are and not assume that we know.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So next, we're going to move on to our next pair, and that's Heidi and Jeff. So you will each have 30 seconds to answer the questions. Your time will start when you begin speaking. Heidi, we're going to start with you first. Here's the first question. Balancing growth and affordability is a crucial challenge for Nashville, and that rings true for the cost of living and the role transportation plays in that cost. Nashvillians spend more on transportation as a percentage of their overall income than residents of peer cities. What specific strategies will you pursue or implement to ease the overall cost of living, and what steps will you take to better align housing and transit?
This is the question of this election. This is why the tagline of my campaign is, are we building a place to visit or a place to live? Because we really are in a situation where we're trying to balance growth, which is a great thing, and we want to continue to support growth, with livability, because we haven't done enough to support livability for Nashvillians. And transit is affordable housing. Transit is livability. So we have to do everything that we can to make sure that we're focusing on the people who are struggling the most first. And we also have to make sure that people can reach transit.
Thank you.
Biggest challenge we face as a city, our current affordable housing strategy is to keep on driving until you can afford something, which is both a bad housing strategy and a worse transportation strategy. So I do think these things are linked. I don't think there's any question to it. I think that you've got to be developing much more dense housing along the places where you've got the infrastructure to support it, but you got to build the infrastructure to support that level of density if you're going to make it happen. We have to have more housing overall, and the only way to get there is via transit.
Thank you. So here's a follow-up question for both of you. Again, you have 30 seconds to answer. So as elected officials, you've had input into budgeting processes, but you haven't had ownership over a multi-billion-dollar budget. How have your previous experiences prepared you to successfully complete a budget that prioritizes transit and mobility when, at least in its first year, it won't include a dedicated funding source? Heidi, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, so this is a question about experience, and that's a very important question. I was a small town mayor before I was a state senator, so I've seen things from both of those perspectives. I served on the Greater Nashville Regional Council, the Mayor's Caucus, the Transit Alliance, the South Corridor Task Force. Those are all very important places to learn about the budget and learn about transit, and very focused on the regional component of it, which I think is very important when it comes to transit.
I served for 4 years on the MTA board, chaired both that finance committee and the board itself, where we paid a lot of attention to the transit budget and expanded it both the years we were on there. For the last 5 years, I've been on the state Senate Finance Committee, have served on both the Revenue Subcommittee, the Appropriations Subcommittee, and that is a $55 billion budget. And there are very few people in the entire legislature who have crawled in as many nooks and crannies of that thing as I have, and held it to account and tried to shape it, albeit indirectly.
Thank you. So here's another question for you two. And Jeff, we'll start with you.
Okay.
What is your plan to encourage the Metro Council, the state of Tennessee, and the mayor's office to partner in the development of a transit system in Davidson County? In other words, what specific steps will you take to make sure everybody plays nice?
Look, I think this is like the critical task here. We largely agree on a lot of pathways forward. The question is, who can build a coalition inside this city, inside city government, with stakeholders, with state government, with federal government, to try to get that done. The next mayor is going to be playing chess on 4 different boards at once and needs to make that all work. That is going to be an immense challenge, but I feel very capable to taking on that task.
Perfect.
I see the office of the mayor as a venture catalyst, not a venture capitalist, to connect opportunity with need. I have done that in the Senate. I did that as a mayor. And that is why I am endorsed by my colleagues, John Ray Clemens, Bo Mitchell, Bob Freeman, Sarah Kyle, Gloria Johnson, because they know that I have done that work and they know that I can calm down the conversation and get everyone to work together. It's something I always have done and something I always will do, and that is exactly why I'm running.
Perfect, thank you. The next question that we are going to ask today is one that's for everyone. We're going to start with Alice. You each have 60 seconds to provide an answer. We're going to go to your right again, as we have been doing. So here's the question. How would you approach planning and implementing a regional transit system that has the support and buy-in from neighboring counties and that is designed specifically to address the dispersed nature of the workforce and employment centers in Nashville and throughout Middle Tennessee? From a workforce perspective, how would your regional transit plans ensure Middle Tennesseans are put on a pathway to prosperity?
Well, I think from the lesson of the 2018 transit failure, I think this group did a pretty good job of pulling together more than 20 county and regional mayors. And so how would I start? I would start how I have already started. About 6 weeks ago, I went to go see Ken Moore, who runs the 70 Mayor Caucus. He's supporting my campaign. I'm honored to have his support. Mayor Rogers Anderson, also in Williamson County. He gave some great advice. He said, as nice as our previous mayor was in quarterbacking that process, she never once came to see him. It didn't occur to her, is what he said. I have always operated from a state and a federal and a sense of the entire state and the region, that we are part of the whole. We are not the only one. So I think I would begin, as I already have, and our neighbors to the south, Mayor Joe Carr. I've spent quite a bit of time with him already, and I think the only way to begin is to see what we've done.
Thank you. Vivian?
I would approach it the same way I approach dealing with issues and resolving issues in the assessor's office. I would bring everybody to the table. We would first have to understand what is the plan that we have going forward, and being that you just said that it's a plan that already has a buy-in, we'll begin with taking the action. We will make sure who knows whose job is to do what. That's so very important. And then we will come back and assess where we are in reference to who has done what, and to see what we have left to do. It's so very important that when you approach any type of issue, you have to measure your accountability, and you have to measure that you have gotten to the milestone to take the next step. And so that's how I approach it. And we will feel good about where we are, because everybody's going to do very well.
Thank you.
So when I was on the Nashville MTA board, we made an important administrative decision with our regional partners and peers to allow WeGo Public Transit to be effectively the transit agency for the region in motion, and the work of the Greater Nashville Regional Council and Metropolitan Planning Organization already exist as good plans. The rest is collaboration. Now, I'll say I'm a little surprised by the lack of ambition and concern about trust up here on this stage, considering that we just went through less than a year-long planning intensive and infrastructure-driven multi-billion-dollar project in less than a year. So I think we can do it again. I have high confidence in us as a city and a region.
So your question was, where do you start? I start with the numbers. So if you're talking about a multi-county transit plan, we have to calculate and understand how many workers are moving from A to B. I mean, the folks weren't opposed to the transit plan. They were concerned that the cost of funding, a 1/2 cent, 1 cent increase in the sales tax, the return to them, their personal benefit, wasn't worth the cost to them. So we have to start by understanding how many people are moving from A to B. It may make sense to have mass transit from Rutherford County into Davidson County, but does it? Into downtown? Or are there more workers who are going to Vanderbilt, or workers who are going to Bellevue? So we first have to understand, where are the traffic patterns today? Because in a large region with relatively low residential density, inconsistent commuting patterns, and different employment nodes, saying, oh, we're gonna have mass transit, we're gonna run a program from A to B, when there aren't that many people going there, isn't going to be successful.
Thank you.
I believe people are ready for transit simply because they're paying just as much in transportation as they are the rent. Two county mayors that I would work with, Mayor Hutto, Wilson County, Mayor Sheila Butt, Murray County. A lot of our workers, especially those that work in the art business, our entertainment business, they travel from Lebanon, they travel from Murray County. So I would assess who is coming from those counties and work with Mayor Hutto and Mayor Sheila Butt to start a plan, comprehensive transit plan from there for Davidson County.
So I actually think we have very willing and open partners in our surrounding counties. Having met with Mayor Carr or Mayor Anderson, they know that they are linked into the same economic ecosystem that, frankly, Nashville drives, and they know that Nashville is the big kahuna. And the Nashville mayor is the individual that needs to lead and coordinate that group. They want to see the growth continue. They want to see prosperity continue. But what we need to do is actually make the effort. Now, we do need to have a coherent plan of where growth is occurring and what people are going to be willing to do. I don't know if anybody in Williamson County is going to hop on a train. And we also know that the train that runs out to Lebanon is now running at 40% of what it was pre-pandemic. So you have to be really careful when you put in fixed hard assets. But I'm confident that we can get to a plan because we do have partners that are willing to work with us.
Dedicated funding and regional transportation are both really critical conversations. I do think they are distinct conversations. I think it is very difficult for a lot of our surrounding counties to think about investing in transit to Davidson County if they don't have the ability to get around Davidson County once they get here. I think the way this should work, the mayor should be the biggest booster that regionalism has. We need to be leading the charge wherever we can on bringing that mayor's caucus together, working with our MPO, working across the region to build those partnerships. But most likely, the way we actually start developing it is with one dance partner at a time. I drafted the legislation that I carried with Bill Ketron several years ago, Rutherford County legislator, to do P3s, which allows us to grab public streams of revenue from multiple counties, put them into the same project so we can think about how we actually build out that infrastructure along key corridors. And I think that that's probably how we work in the short term.
Thank you.
We've spent a lot of time studying this. You know, anybody who's served on any of the task forces knows that we have a lot of data. We know where the workforces are expanding. We have a lot of information because when you don't do things, what you do is study. So we have done a lot of studies. We need to get moving. We are way, way behind in having a meaningful transit plan, and we do not need more studies. We need to actually start working on improving transit in the Middle Tennessee area. And I've already been doing this work because I serve on the Transportation Committee in the Senate, and I also got a TASR study with Rep. Powell on passenger rail, which will connect us, hopefully, we're hoping, to the Eastern Network because they're studying a route from Nashville to Chattanooga, and Chattanooga's already connected to Atlanta. Transit's connectivity, and so we need to make sure that we are doing everything to expeditiously connect people, and that needs to start yesterday.
Well, I would do exactly what I did when I started my transportation program and a workforce development program. Make people know and see how it's going to benefit them. Nashville is about to have an economic tsunami coming here, and people are going to want to put their folks to work. I think if we provide, I think as mayor, what I would do is have a clearinghouse to make sure that we're able to put people into jobs and get the employers to remove the barriers that they have, like driver's license, because many of them cannot go to work because they don't have driver's license, but remove those barriers, the driver's license, the felons, and do all of the things that are necessary to put people to work, because when they're working and they are gainfully employed, then they're able to go back and be part of the economic benefits to those cities. So I think communicating with them and showing how it's going to work for them, it'll be a win-win for us all.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for the answers to that question. Now we're going to move on to the next pair of candidates. I think this is our last pair of candidates. That's Jim and Natisha. You will each have 30 seconds to answer. And just like everyone else, your time will begin when you start speaking. Jim, we're going to start with you. The first question is, what strategies would you implement to gain support from both the public and private sectors in Nashville to secure the necessary funding for the regional transit network? And how would you navigate potential challenges to ensure long-term commitment from relevant stakeholders?
So again, I feel we're going to end up repeating ourselves here a little bit because I do think the secret to getting people to buy into a bigger plan is to show that you can actually get things done, whether or not that is within Nashville on a particular corridor or that is working with a particular partner in the region to start to get things done.
Great, Tisha.
Just like in education, we always do a survey before and after to see what works and what doesn't work. So when working with the both public and the private, we'd like to put out a public survey to see what is needed by the citizens of Davidson County. What would work for you and what would not work for you? As far as dedicated funding, I'd like to work with the EPA organization. They have just released 1.2 million or so and some change, and some funding that we can start talking about clean transit,
Thank you. So this next question is for both of you, and Natisha, we can start with you. That one is, research shows that effective transit systems can have a positive impact on economic development and job creation. How do you plan to leverage the regional transit network to attract businesses, spur economic growth, and enhance employment opportunities in Nashville?
Well, give the businesses that invest in our transit plan, give them incentives, especially those businesses that are coming out of town or coming from out of our state into Davidson County. Give them incentives to invest in our transit plan.
So, yeah, it's no secret that the quality of life of a particular city is what's needed to bring the best talent and keep the best talent in a city. And so it is fundamental that we not only invest in transit because that is important to people's quality of life, but there is a whole list of other infrastructure issues that we need to also be investing in Nashville that are so fundamental to keeping people here and maintaining their quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So here's the next follow-up question. So the implementation of a regional multimodal transit system requires density, especially along high-capacity transit corridors. That's more people, more housing, more businesses, more stuff. Sometimes all of that growth can have an adverse impact on the unique character and charm of the original or existing neighborhood. What specific strategies would you use to mitigate displacement for residents and businesses along high-capacity transit corridors? And we'll start with you, Jim.
I'll volunteer. As has been discussed tonight, it is absolutely fundamental that you pair housing with the density, housing density with what we're doing on a particular route from a transportation standpoint. I think the frustration, though, that people have is that there is much more infrastructure that's required than simply a transit system on that high volume route. And so you have to pair the other infrastructure investments with what's necessary to keep that corridor livable.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks?
One of the things I want to do is work with the areas that are not mentioned. We always talk about downtown. I'd like to talk about my area, the Antioch family that lives in Bordeaux, making sure that they have adequate transportation to get to work, to get around, especially for the seniors and the disabled. We cannot emphasize that enough. We never hear enough talk about that, and that's one of the things that I'm going to do as mayor, is to make sure that our seniors, those that are disabled and special needs, are taken care of.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all out here for hanging in. We are at our last question, okay? So this next question, this last and final question, is for each candidate. We're going to start with Vivian and move down the line to the right. You will have 90 seconds to answer this question. Okay, here is the question. Throughout this evening, we've heard some details surrounding your visions for a comprehensive and sustainable transportation system in Nashville and Davidson County. As we close, what specific milestone will you use to define success in your first term? What about your second?
Well, the milestone I would use to determine how well we are doing is going to be asking the people about how they feel about transit. I mean, I can't do a self-serving type of analogy and just say, I've done well, okay? I'm going to be asking the people, but we're going to start with having an understanding of what is going to be expected. The bar cannot be set high, but it has to be set to a level of reality. Transit cannot happen overnight, people. Transit cannot happen just next year as far as being where we want to be. But we sure can begin on biting the gorilla or eating the gorilla one bite at a time. And that is setting goals. And then we measure those goals to see what is our performance. So one of the things I want to do is work with the state. I would like to see us to expand 840. 840 will help move some of the 18-wheeler traffic from coming into downtown. That's a low-hanging fruit. I would like to also, again, continue to work with WeGo and expand the bus routes. When we're talking about economic parity and removing that or closing that gap, we're talking about neighborhoods that don't have some of the things that other neighborhoods have in the same tax district. We have to stop the inequality of serving our communities.
Thank you.
And as mayor, that will be my approach. Thank you.
Freddie, go ahead.
Thanks. I want to say thank you to Moving Forward and all the coalition partners and to all of you for coming out here to Mayoral Medical College tonight for one of the most important conversations. We've talked tonight about how this is one of the most important missing ingredients we have as a major American city, and I want to make sure that the milestones are that it is no longer a missing ingredient. When we did this 5 years ago and had the conversation that led to a referendum that failed at the ballot box for dedicated funding, we didn't do the both-and approach. We left the plan that WeGo put on our desk that had the useful, popular, visible, cost-effective elements of a traditional better bus system sitting on a shelf. And we went all in on transit referendum. That is good. It had a lot of good things in it. But that led to some of the trust elements because we didn't do the things that were useful, visible, popular, and cost-effective. This time we'll do the both-and approach, and we will take steps and we will watch ridership on a per capita basis. We will watch service delivery metrics. We will watch that household cost of transportation metric as we go down. And at the end of the day, the most important milestone will be, did we, as a city, decide together with our region that, yes, we should add this component, and were we successful at the ballot box on a second referendum for dedicated funding? Most cities that do this don't get it right on the first try, but we're going to do much more to set those milestones up on the front end to know that we're successful before we go try to shoot the moon again. So I'm excited about the opportunity and I hope you'll join me.
Thank you for moderating. Thank you to Moving Forward. Thank you to Dr. Hildreth and Meharry to hosting us. I'll give you my full playbook, and I'll give you the milestones along the way. In the first term, we're going to make meaningful improvements in the existing transportation network that we have, improving the road network by filling the potholes, by having a fully functional transportation center where we have synchronized lights, so you're not just sitting at a red light with no traffic comping. That's going to take investments, but will build trust over time. We will also begin day one on having a plan to have dedicated mass transit from the airport to downtown along Murfreesboro Pike, where we can build affordable housing. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that. That will happen the first day that I am in office. We will have dedicated funding for mass transit. It may be in the 26 election, it may be in the 28 election. I'm not ready to commit to that. I want to listen to the experts and mostly to the community to build a plan to make sure that it's successful. We will make improvements in the pedestrian infrastructure so that we have sidewalks to actually be able to get to the mass transit that we've been talking so much about. We'll have an improved relationship with the mayors in the surrounding community to begin to build these multi-county regional plans to have a network infrastructure. But it starts by building trust and actually making the life better, fully funding the Better Bus Plan, and making sure that people who utilize transit have their lives improved. When you build that trust, you can take on the bigger challenges down the road.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks, go ahead.
As a 33-year retired educator, emphasis on special needs autism, the benchmarks that I'm going to grade our administration are the following. One, making sure that our seniors, our disabled, and our special needs individuals are taken care of, making sure that there's funding, that 50 Forward, moving forward, a lot of the senior transportations are fully funded and never run out of money. As far as the special needs, please don't forget about the special needs. Some that graduate, they want to go into their own lives, their own homes. We need to make sure that there's funding for them as well. In the second administration, I want to make sure that if we're going to when we get started with transit, that it's clean. I'd like to make sure that we have clean energy transit and make sure we get a lot of that grant funding that was available starting of February this year and work along with the state. You must choose a mayor that has a good relationship with the state and surrounding county mayors, and that person is me. As your mayor, we will ensure that not only just for moving transportation, people like me that want to ride the bike have lanes that are secure and protected and we're not in danger of anything around Davidson County. My name is Natisha. They call me Natisha Armis Brooks, Natisha Brooks 16. I ask for your vote, and Godspeed, Nashville.
So I'll give you 4 metrics in the first 4 years. First, we had 49 pedestrians that were killed last year. That is up dramatically from where we were not that long ago. That has to change. By the end of my first term, that number will have been cut significantly because we will have done basic things such as get the sidewalks fixed and build sidewalks where people are trying to get to mass transit, fix dangerous intersections, get traffic calming in place in more neighborhoods. Second, we will work to get the basics right and build confidence that we can actually execute. And that is everything, again, from getting the traffic lights synchronized, keeping the roads in good condition, increasing the frequency of buses on high volume routes, show that we can get the technology in place that prevents bus bunching. Third, we are going to make tangible progress on having a regional plan in place and have steps that will be taken that we can begin to implement very, very quickly. And fourth, that will in turn give us a plan for how we are going to go to the broader population and get dedicated funding. And then if you're talking about the second term, we will actually get that done.
Okay.
I have 3 ultimate goals that guide my thinking here, and I'm going to ask if honored enough to be mayor for the help of the people in this room to get all 3 of them done. 1, we have to pass dedicated funding for transportation and transit in this city. 2, we have to deploy dedicated lane transit that works in high capacity, that allows people to live lives that are less dependent on cars. And the thing I'm going to measure at the end is how many more Nashvillians are capable of living safe, high-quality lives without needing to own a car. And if we're not working towards that, we're not really having the full conversation that the organizations that are putting on this forum need to have. I'm Jeff Yarbrough. I'm asking for your vote. This is something that matters to me and has mattered to me for a long time. I served for 4 years on the MTA board. I went to the legislature. I served for 2 years on the transportation committee. The first one-on-one meeting I had with Bill Haslam was to work on getting the ability to do dedicated funding into the Improve Act gas tax bill that he worked on in 2016. Just this last year, I am the only candidate here who supported and worked with Butch Ely and the governor to pass the Transportation Modernization Act and negotiated some concessions and assurances that we are going to put multimodal into those projects. I am deeply committed to doing this work, to building the coalitions that it's going to take to get this job done, because I think it is essential to the future of the city. I ask for your vote.
Thank you.
Thank you so much moving forward, and to all of you for sticking it out with us. This is such an important, kinetic, and interesting subject, and it occurred to me the other day that the situation Nashville's in right now kind of reminds me of my son Atticus. Atticus is at that age as a teenager where his body has grown really fast, but he doesn't really know how to use it. And I feel like Nashville is like a teenage boy that's grown really fast, but we didn't have the support and infrastructure necessarily to navigate that. And we're really seeing that with affordable housing, with transit. That growth is going to continue. And we have to do something about that right away. And one thing we need to do is make sure that we continue to catalyze efficiencies, things like smart city technology, like Nashville Yards is investing in, because that is actually going to help us expedite the process of implementing transit solutions, affordable housing solutions, and energy efficiency solutions. All of these things are interconnected. So I took the time to write a policy platform and put it on my website. It's voteheidicampbell.com. And I ask you to go take a look because I talk about all of these things. My phone number is also on that website. Please feel free to text me if you have ideas or questions. Feel free to text me anyway. I'm a state senator. Would love to hear from you. Thank you.
As your next mayor, I will ensure that those who depend on our bus transit to get around actually has it. We will expand routes to make sure that they have it. We will ensure that there are bus shelters, new bus shelters at all of our bus stations and bus stops for those who need it the most. I will ensure that we will have dedicated funding for a dedicated bus line because I am sure that the Titans Express will work. I believe people will pay for it coming from every quadrant from outside of our surrounding counties. I think we probably could get a star player to come on the bus every now and then to enhance them to want to do it. But I also would offer some training for bus drivers and increase the workforce development for those who, to make sure that we always have those who will be able to carry out the work that is needed with bus stations, because I think we're short of bus drivers and we need people that are sensitive to those who use that access ride, because we want to make sure that they are always safe. So I will put in some safety measures to ensure that we have that, as well as training and sensitivity for the ridership that uses it the most.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for having us. In terms of ratios, I would agree first with Jim's metric around reducing our pedestrian deaths. The second that I would look at is to improve the percentage overall of people going to an employer, healthcare center, school, work, or a downtown entertainment venue that have the option to use transportation or transit for some part of their journey. I don't think regionally we were going to get away in full, but as the pain of traveling and parking to some of these areas increases, I think our ratio of how many of our patrons, how many of our employees are able to use transit, either collecting in a certain place and then busing from there for part of their journey. And then I would also look very specifically at our win rate within NDOT and our percentage of our funds that we're able to leverage from either the state or the federal government. And so the biggest mover there would obviously be getting a dedicated transit funding passed. That would move that the furthest, the fastest. And I think some of the technology that we have recently put in place in our downtown core around our new parking mechanism is going to give us the ability to prove back to the state the percentage of cars that are coming in that are not Davidson County cars, so that we can think about turning some of those leverage ratios for more dollars to come to Davidson County to support cars coming from Wilson, Rutherford, Sumner County, and otherwise. And we can make the case to do that.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you all for sticking out with us today. We really appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedules to hear from the candidates. Before we go, while I have you, okay? There's just one more thing we want to say. We want to give you all a digital takeaway. So when you came in, you should have got a card with a QR code on it. That QR code takes us to Moving Forward's annual report. I encourage all of you to scan that QR code. If you don't know how to use a QR code, find me or someone from the chamber and we can help you get access to our report. Thank you all for joining us today. And before we go, we just want to emphasize to all of you that this is very important to us. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you.